Catherine Stihler, one of the big debates going on in terms of Brexit in the UK is over the devolved administrations and whether all of the powers should be going back to the devolved assemblies from the EU, or whether Westminster should be taking some of them and centralising them and coming up with a centralised system in place for certain sectors. What's your view? Now, it's been seen by perhaps the SNP and some in Wales in particular as a power grab. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I think that if powers are being conducted in the devolved parliaments and governments, then they should go back to the devolved parliaments and governments. And I think the fact that I think the devolved governments of Scotland and Wales, and obviously there's not one at the moment in Northern Ireland, but at the moment they haven't agreed to what the UK government is saying, I think this is deeply regrettable. I think the whole way the UK government is conducting the negotiations with the devolved governments is one that is deeply, deeply regrettable. Unlike what we have here, a 4-week cycle of ways of working. You could replicate that in the United Kingdom, and sadly the British government is choosing not to. And I think that the overall way that they give papers out at the last minute or don't get the Scottish government or the Welsh government to comment on them enough time, it's just not a way to work with what we are facing, which is one of the biggest man-made crises that we've met as a country in, I don't know, in a generation.
Now, Theresa May is due to hold private talks with Scottish and Welsh First Ministers this week.
Sure.
What should she be doing? What should she be saying to try and break this deadlock at the moment?
Well, I think you need to listen. And also I think it's actually something more fundamental than that. We've had devolution in the United Kingdom since 1999. And that devolution is important to the people of Scotland, the people of Wales, and to the people of Northern Ireland. We have to accept we have a different way of working now. We're not as centralised a state as we were before. And I think now, you have to accept that the Scottish government, the Scottish Parliament, have a say in what is happening over Brexit and implications that is happening to our business communities, to our people, our citizens. And I think at the moment, I think it's deeply regrettable the way that the United Kingdom government, the Tory government, is conducting itself.
Do you think Theresa May and the Conservative government are pushing the case for independence in Scotland again?
I think, at the moment, and no one is talking about what we want to do. For me, Brexit has huge implications for Scotland, and Scotland voted to remain part of the European Union. And I feel just now the recognition that 48% of people in our United Kingdom voted to remain part of the European Union, their voice is being completely and utterly neglected. And I think while we're moving forward, I wish Brexit wasn't happening, but both the leaders of the main parties, it is happening. So how do we mitigate this disaster on our people? Because there is no good Brexit. All Brexits will lead to job losses, loss of influence, and something where we need to be open and honest with people.
Now, the government would obviously come back and say it's to a certain extent in some of the powers which they want to centralise, such as GM crops, pesticides regulation, organic farming, fishing quotas, food safety, strengthening the internal market and the regulations in the internal market is actually better.
This is very interesting, isn't it? Because here we have an argument made by the British Conservative government. We want to do something about the single market of the United Kingdom. Yet the same argument should be applying for the single market of the European Union and how important it is for our jobs, our economy and our future. So part of me is we've taken different choices, say about GM crops in Scotland, we've taken different choices, we've made different decisions. In fact, when you look at fishing, it has been Scottish ministers that have often led in the Fish Council negotiations. And it is accepted that in Scotland, 70% of our fisheries, is in Scotland. So I think that this is just another example of how devolution has happened. And we have to ensure that the Conservative government at Westminster recognises that, works with the Scottish government and the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh government and the Welsh Assembly to get it right. And at the moment, I think they're just not getting it right because they don't accept that things have changed in the United Kingdom.
Now, in terms of, you just mentioned their fisheries.
Yes.
Now, Ruth Davidson and Michael Gove teamed up to call for the UK to leave the common fisheries policy when Britain leaves the European Union. Would you be happy with continued access for EU vessels in UK territorial waters for fishing?
So we reformed the Common Fisheries Policy back in the early 2000s. I was part of that reform to get regional advisory councils. Now with Brexit, you've got the thorny issue of what we do about fisheries. And I think at the moment, market access for our fish products, what is going to happen to the live prawn market in the west coast of Scotland that has to reach a paella plate in Madrid in 24 hours if we crash out of the European Union? So I hear a lot about quotas, I hear a lot, but what I want to know is what is the UK government going to do to ensure market access for our fishing products? And at that moment, that is not certain because we are no longer going to be part of the single market, which is an absolute outrage.
And for you, would it be a fair compromise to allow EU fishing to continue in Scottish waters, UK territorial waters, as part of a Brexit deal? Would that be something you would not be? I
think that what we have to do, for me, is to ensure that we have market access to our fish products. And I want to see that as being part of us still being and maintaining the single market. And that's really important if we want to do that. I think all this talk about, what is worrying today in this chamber is that people are openly talking that there's not going to be a transition. And that's from British MEPs. We know that the transition is essential, absolutely essential for some certainty. I was just talking to the whisky industry at the weekend, and they are very worried that they need a transition. So at the moment, if you look at fishing, what I would say about fisheries, which is not part of the debate, yes, they're talking about quotas, what they need to talk about is how our fishermen are going to get their fish to the main markets that are important to them. And if we don't have single market access, if we're not part of a customs union, what are we going to do about fishing?
Now, this conversation, we've identified two clear differences. One, the internal market of the United Kingdom, and the other, the single market of the European Union. I'm just wondering, because you've emphasised very clearly, and you're part of the Scottish Labour for the Single Market campaign.
I am, yes.
What's more important for you, maintaining Scottish, UK access to the single market of the EU, or strengthening and maintaining the internal market of the UK?
Well, at the moment, I don't think the two things have to be seen together, because you have to ensure that we be part of the single market, and we also have to make sure we're part of the single market of the United Kingdom. Now, the United Kingdom, what you've been describing about what the British government wants to do about devolved powers, you can have devolution, but you're still part of the United Kingdom. That's not in question. What is in question at the moment is the 80,000 jobs that are reliant on our single market access with the European Union. And if we do not have the single market and the customs union as options as we look towards our future trading arrangements, then we're putting jobs at risk, we're putting livelihoods at risk, and we're putting our economy at risk, and that's in nobody's interest.
What would you say to someone like Nicola Sturgeon, who's making a very good point of wanting to keep Scotland in the single market? And the reason why I asked that previous question was, would you, entertain any idea, which perhaps more SNP idea, that Scotland should remain in the single market, and what the rest of the UK does is the rest of the UK's
business? I didn't fight
business.
for us to remain part of Scotland to remain part of the United Kingdom for nothing back 4 years ago.
So fundamentally, the internal market is more important.
I think what we have to do is we have to ensure that we have single market EU access for jobs and the economy. We have to make sure that the United Kingdom works in the devolved way that it is now set up, and I don't believe that the current UK government is accepting the devolved principles that were agreed upon back in 1999. Now we are in a different situation because we are leaving the EU. This is a tragedy, and I think what we're looking for is the options are very limited to us now, very limited. And the fact that the UK Conservative government is saying that we're no longer going to be part of the single market, we're no longer going to be part of the customs union, these are political choices. They do not need to make those political choices.
But would you back an SNP campaign to keep Scotland in the single market, given the need for it?
What I am backing is Scottish Labour in the single market to persuade my own party and my own party members that the single market is essential if we want to protect jobs, if we want to protect the economy, and we want to protect livelihoods. And if we don't campaign for that, for generations to come, we will be judged about why we didn't stand up to protect our economy, to protect our jobs, and to ensure that we have market access for our products. And at the moment, as you know, Scotland is very reliant on the food and drinks industry. Absolutely essential that we have market access in the European Union. And currently, what I am seeing, we've got to be really clear. If we do not approve this withdrawal, we've got a draft withdrawal agreement in front of us, both in this House, in the European Parliament, and obviously it will come to the House of Commons as well, not to be confused with the withdrawal bill that's going through at the moment.
Absolutely
I think there's a lot of confusion at the moment. So let's look at this. If we do not get this draft withdrawal agreement agreed between the UK government and the EU, we will leave on the 29th of March, 381 days away, and we will crash out as a third country of the European Union. That is not in anyone's interests. What I'm advocating for is some sensibility in these talks, where we have to retain single market access and being part of the customs union to maintain jobs, maintain livelihoods, and ensure that we mitigate the worst possible aspects of what is Brexit. Brexit is a disaster for our country, it really is, and we have to be honest about the choices ahead, not blame the European Union for these choices. These are choices that people back home have to take responsibility for, and the choices open to us if we don't remain part of the single market and customs union are very, very stark.
Just one other story which has come out this week, which of course has to be covered, is what's going on in the leader's office with regards to shadow cabinet members claiming bullying in the Labour Party, and the stories coming out from there is that perhaps there is a problem within the Labour Party, as there is indeed perhaps in Westminster and politics in general. Just your thoughts. I mean, do you feel that there is a problem as a female MEP of the Labour Party? Or is this something which is perhaps more isolated?
The Labour Party does not tolerate bullying, and I think anywhere that there's accusations of bullying at workplaces should be absolutely and utterly investigated and dealt with in a strict and coherent manner. And I think that nobody should go to a workplace and feel threatened or feel bullied in any way, shape or form. That is completely and utterly unacceptable.
Catherine Stihler, thank you very much.
Thank you.